so on. I want to go. My little boy had a Chumash Suda a little over a week ago, and they start learning Vayikra. And all the kids, it's so cute, it's so sweet. The first Chumash that they learn, Vayikra el Moshe, Vayidab Hashem Elav, the laws of the sacrifices. And all the children chime out in unison, and then they go around the whole class. They're on a stage, and all the tatis and mammies, everyone's snapping the pictures, of course, and each child gets to say 2 words or a word and translate it. And you wonder, of all the parshias that we're going to begin teaching children Chumash, we're going to introduce them to the Torah. I would imagine we would want to introduce them, if not to Bereshis, because, Genesis, maybe it's a little esoteric, it's a little hard for them to grasp. You want to introduce them to Lech Lecha, Avram Avinu. We're the Jewish people, we'll cross over the river, the rest of civilization, we can step aside, we're separate, and we're ready to go after you, Hashem. Lech Lecha me'atzecha me'melatzecha. I would imagine, maybe we would learn with them the 10 Commandments. Maybe we should learn with them, to introduce them to the Torah, the story of the Exodus, leaving Egypt. That's pretty riveting, pretty fundamental. And yet instead, the first word that they learn is Vayikra. Vayikra el Moshe, and he called to Moshe. Hashem called to Moshe. And he spoke to him from the tent of meeting. And he said, a man that brings from yourself a sacrifice to Hashem, from the behemoth, from the baka, from the tzon, from the various types of animals, takriva, you should draw as karbanchem, your sacrifices. And everybody asks, why are we learning this? Why are we teaching this? The first thing to the child, that we bring sacrifices. And the commentaries say, the Torah says, when a man brings from himself, Adam ki yakriv mikem, karban Hashem, a man draws of himself as a sacrifice to Hashem, from the behemoth, from the baka, from the tzon, from the various animals, you should bring your sacrifices. The act of bringing the sacrifice, the ritual, is only the symbol of something that is transpiring that's much deeper. We're bringing ourselves. When we put the animal on the Mizbeach, we are sacrificing our own animal instincts, our own person. We're subjugating, we're surrendering, we're in the army, ready to do Hashem's will. Adam, a man, ki yakriv mikem, when he draws of himself, karban Hashem, a sacrifice to Hashem. In the act, the way we will display that is the externality promotes the internality. We will symbolize it by bringing the animal, but really we're bringing ourselves. We're drawing ourselves close. Adam ki yakriv mikem karban Hashem. I want to be the karban. I want to draw close. Yitzchak says on the altar of the Akedah, Tati, Abba, Taimi Taita. I don't want to invalidate the sacrifice. We're bringing ourselves as a sacrifice. We're ready to sacrifice our lives for our faith, for our belief in you, for following your will as you wish. We are yours. There's no I. And then Hashem reflects that relationship. Vayikra el Moshe. Do you notice in the Vayikra there's a little aleph? The aleph at the end of Vayikra is small in the Chumash. In the actual Sefer Torah, the Masorah, the way we write the Sefer Torah, is accepted from Sinai. It's a little aleph, and you could read it Vayikar. Without the aleph, it reads Vayikar, which means he coincidentally bumped into. But there's a little aleph, which makes it read Vayikra, and he called. You hear? With Bilam, it says in this week's parasha, Vayikar Elokim el Bilam, and God bumped into Bilam. There was no real attraction, there's no real desire to talk to him. Bilam saw everything as a mikra, it's coincidental. Everything is cool, kar. Kar means cool. Everything is chilled. No, there's no, it just happens. Vayikar Elokim el Bilam. Everything is fine, you know. Don't get carried away from anything. You can see God everywhere. Come on, give me a break. Don't get too spiked spiritually. Okay, it's okay if it's new agey, but don't get into the real deal. What's the difference between Bilam and Moshe? Moshe has that little aleph, Vayikra. Do you know why Hashem called so lovingly to Moshe? Because he saw himself as a small little aleph. He added the little aleph. It's not about me. It all flows from you. You're the beginning. You're the one. It's not about me. That's the first thing we want to teach the little child as we introduce him into the army of Hashem, into the doctrine, into the rules, the laws of engagement with the body. Vayikra. Vayikra el Moshe. Hashem is calling to us all the time. He's really calling to us all the time. It's a little voice inside of us, a little neshama that's calling to us all the time. We just have to pick up the vibrations. The black box is pinging. It's sending messages all the time. But for us to be receptive, we have to have that little aleph. And if we're not receptive, anything and everything goes. It doesn't mean a thing. It doesn't mean a thing. We just chilled. Vayikra Moshe. I can't get over this. Moshe Rabbeinu. Bilam, Hashem is talking to him. The donkey's talking to him. And the donkey's making a mockery of him. He carries on talking back to the donkey like nothing happened. And then he sees the angel in front of him. He starts talking to the angel. A person can see everything. You know, I want to ask you guys. Let's talk about ourselves. Let's say we are discussing, questioning, ascertaining just how much God intervenes in the affairs of man. And I say, you know what? If God really, really exists and cares about us, let a fire, a supernatural fire, come through that window. The window should shatter. The fire should dance around the table. It won't burn any of this farm. And then water should pour from the roof, from the ceiling. Water should pour on the fire. And the fire will not be extinguished. The water will just evaporate. The fire will dance around the room 7 times and disappear. That's essentially what Shmuel did before the people, when they asked for a king. He made a similar type of, you read in Shmuel, similar type of sign. Let's say I asked God, please God, I know I'm unworthy, I'm totally who am I to ask? But please bring us this sign. We need a little chizuk in our emunah. We need a little fortifying in our trust in you. Bring it on, Hashem. Right now, at 10:08 a.m. on this sunny Monday morning, the fire comes through the window, dances around the table, and exactly as I asked, the water comes pouring out. Tons of water pours over the table. The fire doesn't go out. And then the fire circles the room 7 times and it goes out. we're all watching. I want to ask you, how long do you think that sign from God would impress us, affect us, change us, bring us close to Him, shake us down to the core, to the bottom of our boots? We'd be shaking, I imagine. How long do you think it would last for?
At least 2 years. 5.
Less, probably less. It will wear off quickly.
If the fire was spinning around here 7 times,
Yes.
5 years?
it's pretty miraculous.
Chaim? How long do you think it would leave its... Josh?
I don't know.
What would you say?
You
I still remember Ashkan
Couple
Pratis.
weeks.
Less.
I give it 3 days. At most. At most. I can't imagine after 3 days that my davening would look much different than it did this morning. You know? Really. You're talking about 5 years you run?
If you just visualize a fire, like, I still remember Ashkan Pratis. That happened to me a year and a half ago.
I'll tell you, in the, you have to be very, very great to absorb. We only absorb based on who we are. I always love to say over the story my father said over of when he was growing up. I just said it, didn't I? Rabbi Yitzchak Masmid, did you hear him? He grew up he was born in Manchester in 1920. And in 1932 or 33, a very, very great tzaddik came from Russia. He was a Chabad chassid called Rabbi Yitzchak Masmid. He was such a saintly person, you can't imagine. I mean, he was like Reb Hillel Paracha. He was a very, very great and holy man. He never slept on a bed, that's for sure. He ate very little. He learned the whole time. You couldn't understand. He was all mystical. He was a mystic. He was a very, very saintly man. And he would sit, he'd eat almost nothing. He came to collect for Russian Jewry. It was in Stalinist. It was behind already the Iron Curtain. There were a lot of people in prison. He was on a shlichus from the Riats, from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, whom he was very close with, obviously. And he came to Manchester. My father said he didn't simply not sit on a chair. He didn't sit back on a chair ever like this. He sat on the edge of a chair. He didn't want to derive pleasure from this world. He was really, something out of this world. Never put his hands beneath his belt like this, he said.
All right, he kept getting up, you said.
And he kept getting up, right? Kept going. Every 10 seconds he was going like this. He's lifting himself up to Hashem. I know he didn't want to derive pleasure from the chair. Wow. He's a great man. Reb Dessler writes that he was in London. The best week of his life was when Rabbi Yitzchak Masmid stayed in his house. He didn't let go of him for a moment. He derived much of his great writings were taken from that week that he had with Rabbi Yitzchak Masmid. So my father said he went to the Central Synagogue in Manchester. It's still standing, very beautiful edifice, but it's it was a synagogue. So in those days, the people were very simple. I don't know if they probably, after synagogue, they went to the store in their cars, but they were Orthodox, like United Synagogue. And in those days they didn't have basketball, baseball. On Sundays they would all go out to the horse races. You bet on the horses. That was the big thing. Today, you have the Kentucky Derby. You have, talk about the Triple Crown. But it's one thing of like 10 different things that everybody's involved in. The baseball and basketball and soccer and hockey and then there's just so many other distractions they're busy with. In those days they didn't have TV they had, Sunday going out to the horse races was the big thing. Everybody had their favorite horses. That was the topic of discussion. The hot item during the Kiddush Club. Anyway, so he said they went to shul with Yitzchak Masmid to make an appeal. Shabbos morning. My father was a young boy, a bar mitzvah boy, together with his uncle or something. They went to accompany Rabbi Yitzchak Masmid to the Central Synagogue. He davened earlier. He came there during laning, and after the laning, he was escorted to the front of the shul. Everybody was there in their top hats, a very formal English, a whole ceremony. So after davening, the Rabbi introduced Rabbi Yitzchak Masmid. And he got up, he spoke for 10 minutes. heavenly stuff. And he spoke a little low. He's a bent over, very humble person. After davening, my father went up to the front to escort him back home with my uncle, and he hears the president of the shul telling the guy next to him, he says, Ike, he said, what did you think of the rabbi's sermon? He said to him, Sammy, I didn't understand a bloody word, but whoa, he would make a good jockey, wouldn't he? He would make a good jockey. He saw Rabbi Yitzchak Masmed, and he saw him going like this on the chair.
A horse. He's a horse rider.
A horse rider, sure. He'd make a good jockey. You're looking at the saints. You're looking at a person of a different world. But we can only see the world from our own frame of reference. And as much as our frame of reference is limited, that's how we will interpret it. You know, in Eastern Europe, in the times of the Chafetz Chaim, there's a famous story of a dibuk. There was a girl that was invested with a spirit from the next world, and they brought her father brought her on a horse and buggy to Radin, and they wanted the Chafetz Chaim to excise this spirit that had invested itself in this girl. And there were many, many people that saw it. The girl was in a room, and she would be motionless, almost like shaking in a Caesar-like state, and the spirit is talking from inside of her. And the boys from the yeshiva came in, and together with their Rav, and they were asking the dibuk different things, and the dibuk was saying, "Get out!" You know, and he said about one of the boys some of the things that he'd done and embarrassed him, and and so on. And when the boys were walking back to the yeshiva, the mashgiach said, "How are you walking back like regular people? You just saw such clear testimony to a living spirit that resides inside each and every one of us, and here's a tortured soul that can't find its place in the next world and has inhabited for whatever reason this body. How are you not like, ah?" Anyway, the Chafetz Chaim sent in a minion from his kollel, including Rabbi Chanan Wasserman. And Rabbi Chanan Wasserman, he instructed exactly how to excise the spirit with various sayings from Tehillim or whatever, and the blowing of a shofar. And the dibuk exited with great torturous pain. They asked the dibuk, they conversed with it, they asked him about different people. They said, "How is the Chafetz Chaim? What is he held on in the next world?" And they said, he's like a Tana. He's like someone in the time of the Gemara of the highest. Mind-blowing. Rabbi Chanan Wasserman said over afterwards, he used to say over the story of the dibuk for every Purim in the yeshiva in Branovich, he would say over the story to give emunah to the Talmidim. He said after he spoke to the dibuk, he had no more free choice. He didn't have free choice anymore. He'd lost his free choice. He couldn't do a sin. It's like putting your hand in fire. You're going to put your hand in fire, you're going to get burnt. You know, nobody puts their hand in fire. What I think is, Rabbi Chanan Wasserman had that experience precisely because he'd prepped and conditioned and prepared himself. He knew it. It was here. Now it was here. But if it's not here, we'll see it, but we'll interpret it on our level. Another guy could be watching it, and it's just a fascinating, it's a movie script. It's incredible. We could see the same thing, the Roche test. When you want to take a child, you want to know, you throw some ink on a piece of paper, make a picture, and you ask the child, what do they see? Now some children will see, I see a little outline of a bunny rabbit. You can see its ears. Some will see a little puppy with a doggy tail. Some see a lion, a ferocious lion. You can tell a lot about the fears and the personality based on what the person sees and how the person interprets. They could read. It's so fascinating from your handwriting. When they want to ascertain a person, the FBI, they check a person's internal character. They ask him to draw a tree. Draw a tree with the landscape. tells you everything about a person. How does it tell you? The curves, exactly how the curves of the leaves are, whether they put little fruit in the tree, how they place the trunk of the tree. Is it like this or is it like this? If they put grass on the side of the tree, if there's little trees next to the tree, every single nuance and flourish and drop of the pen says how the person views the world. And how we view the world is how the world is incorporated and viewed by us. And our job is to change the frame, to change our lens. And we see a different world. Can you imagine Bilam is speaking, his donkey is talking to him. The world is called the world of Chomer. The Chamor, the donkey, reflects the bony, material, physical world, Chumrius, the world of the physical, material, lethargic, completely indulgent in self, so to speak. The world of Chomer. Am hadoime lechamor. And it means nothing. He keeps moving on. He's determined to curse the Jewish people. He sees God says, don't curse them, they're blessed. And he continues trying to curse them. And he continues trying to curse them. How can it be? The answer is, we'll see and see and see and see nothing, if that's where we are. But listen, everything is chilled. Chill it off. So fascinating. Bilam looks at the Jewish people and he says, Matovu Alecha Yaakov Mishkanesecha Yisrael. He sees such beauty, such greatness, such spiritual holiness. Lo hibit oven b'Yaakov v'lo ra omol b'Yisrael. In this verse there is so much. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not gaze at the sins of the Jewish people of Jacob. V'lo ra omol b'Yisrael, for he doesn't see toil in sin amongst Yisrael. Hashem elekav imoy, Hashem their God is with them even when they are straying. There's a conscience, a Jewish guilt that is banging away inside. Why do we have guilt? Why are we embarrassed? Why are Jews so embarrassed? Because we have a big soul. And embarrassment is really the gap. It's experiencing the chasm, the gap between body and soul being inconsistent and misaligned. When I'm caught doing something wrong or inappropriate, I'm embarrassed. Why am I embarrassed? Why am I embarrassed? Because I know I shouldn't be doing this. My conscience tells me I shouldn't be doing this. Hashem elekav imei, the Jewish people have such busha. It's a wonderful character trait. The nations of the world don't experience busha to such a degree. We experience busha, we're embarrassed. Right at the beginning of creation, I'm going to say something. Please don't interpret this as racist. And if you do feel if you're interpreting this as having racial undertones, please erase it, because it is not meant in that vein or in that fashion whatsoever. But we find when Noach, after he came out of the ark, and he was lying on the ground naked and drunk, and Ham, the hot-blooded son of Noach, has a son called Canaan, who reports to his father, hey, come, this is like from one of those sites. Let's go out and look. Zadie is rolling on the ground. And he does something terrible with Noach's reproductive organs. They're like lowly people, low person. Cham. And when Noach wakes up and realizes that his two brothers, Shem and Yefes, went and covered him, covered his nakedness, and Cham did what he did. Cham is hot, he's the hot-blooded one. He said, Oral Canaan, Evet, he's going to be a slave, he's going to be a lowly one. He's going to be a servant to his brothers. It's going to be lowly. He doesn't have... Do you want to have a litmus test, a barometer to tell us that determines the spirituality of a person? It's in how much embarrassment they have. Do you know when we change colors and our face goes red, it registers, we're embarrassed, we're uncomfortable. Cham, the black people that became the avodim to the rest of the world, they're avodim. They can't change color, their face registers no embarrassment. Embarrassment is the hallmark of a Jew. We're baishonim. Why are we embarrassed? Because we have a big soul. And when we're not acting in consonance with our soul, we're ashamed of ourselves. We cover it up. We don't feel good. You know? But that's a blessing. We realize it's not a healthy zone. It's not us. Even when we sin, Hashem Elokov Imoy, Hashem is with us. Utruas Malach Boy. There's a desire to connect. There's a trua. We're embarrassed. And Bilam recognizes this special quality of the Jewish people. But he's himself. He's not changing. Because he can't change. Because when we decide we're free, we don't want to just let our hair down. Don't tell me what to do. We could see everything black and white, but we ain't changing. Our frame is set. We're not willing to change. The Gemara tells us that, you have, still today people practice it where you can actually speak to spirits in the next world. And the Gemara tells us that one of the great people of the Roman world brought up the spirit of Bilam and communicated with him. He communicated with many in the next world that had left the pathway of that were terrible people. Communicated with them, and he communicated with Bilam, and he said, "What is your judgment in the next world?" And he says, "I am in a steaming hot pot of urine, of..." There's something deep in that. It doesn't mean he brought promiscuity to the Jewish people, and he lived in a world of freedom and of the senses, of masturbation, a total unhinged, without any inhibitions, consorted with his donkey. In the next world we live, who we are in this world in a spiritual sense is torture. So he lived in that. So he said, the fellow asked him, tell us, what are the Jewish people in the next world? He said, they are the highest. And he said, should I join them? This person was considering becoming a ger, say the Gemara. And he said, don't touch them with a barge pole. Don't have anything to do with them. Here he is. He knows the truth. He declares the truth. He knows the Jews are the chosen people. And yet, I'm not going to change. I am who I am. That's my reality. That's my frame.
One cannot change when he's in the next world. That's it.
Huh?
One cannot change when he's in the next world.
Yeah, you can't change. That's true. But even though that's exactly what's reflected in the next world is our essence in this world, amplified 1,000,000 times more, that's our reality. Can't delude ourselves. Our job is to change the frame, to make ourselves a vayikra, so that we hear the calling, we're listening to the calling, we want to hear what Hashem is communicating with us. It's not my way or the highway. I want to go, and I want to do, and I need my honor and my prestige. Like Bilam. We're ready to change the frame. We're in growth mode. The most important thing with teaching a child when he's 5 years old and he's starting out on the pathway of real life, let's be in growth mode. Make the little aleph. That's the constant work of life, to diminish the self, the I, to be listening, to be hearing. What is my calling? What is the calling of the moment? What does Hashem want from me now? And it's true, I'm embarrassed, I've gone off course. But that is also part of the pathway back. I'm in growth mode. And then we're here, and we're communicating. But if there's a Vayikar, if there's no little Aleph, everything is coincidental. Nothing registers. We could see the greatest miracles of creation. We could see it all in front of our eyes. And we see nothing. It's all there for me. It's so powerful. It's such an important lesson. Guys, have a wonderful day. Good Shabbos, everybody.
Good Shabbos.
Onwards bound. Tomorrow, Tuesday, I will be away, Mrs.